I'm Dr. Daniel Amen, the author of The End of Mental Illness. I'm a physician, a psychiatrist, a brain imaging researcher. At Amen Clinics here, we've built the world's largest database of brain scans related to behavior, more than 160,000 on people from 121 countries. And what the images taught us is that most psychiatric issues are not mental health issues at all, but rather they are brain health issues that steal your mind. And this one idea changes everything. Get your brain right and your mind will follow. Being a psychiatrist for a very long time, I realized a long time ago that no one really wants to see a psychiatrist. No one wants to be labeled as defective or abnormal, but everybody wants a better brain. In The End of Mental Illness, I talk about, well, what if we reimagine mental health as brain health? And when you do that, you decrease stigma, you increase compliance, you increase compassion and forgiveness from families, plus it is more accurate. With a better brain always comes a better life. Help me end mental illness now. Hey everybody, we are so excited that you have joined us. Whose phone is that?
Not mine.
I'm Dr. Daniel Amen.
Oh, that's me.
End of mental illness.
Here we go.
Live
Oh,
and
boy.
distorted by the phone. Welcome Mexico City, welcome Stockholm, Sweden, welcome New Zealand, and everyone from around North America and the United States. We are so grateful that you're here, and we want you to help us end mental illness. That's the goal of all of this, and I believe it's possible if we create enough brain warriors. And tonight in our last class, we're going to talk about how to make a massive difference. But before we get to it, I just want to tell you how beautiful you look,
Oh, thank you.
how happy I am you're here, because without you, I would have a mental illness.
Oh,
So I guess I should be nice to you.
you mean because you'd miss me, or you mean because I would create one?
No, I would miss you.
Oh, just
I'm
clarifying.
not going to purposely do anything stupid because you make me happy. There's some questions, but I want everybody to know, please fill out the survey. That way we know where people were when they started, and then after 6 weeks. And then for those of you that want to enter the contest, we want you to submit a video, an audio, or a written testimonial on how this information has changed your life or the life of someone you love. And it can't be long. See the rules that are attached. I think it's like 2 minutes, 500 words, so on, just because, we're hoping we're going to get thousands of entries, and our team's not that big. So we would just dearly love for you to share your story so we can then share it with the world. I mean, that's how people change. People change through stories. And tonight we're going to talk about a number of stories. So what's on your mind, beautiful lady?
I just can't believe we're on week 6. It's like crazy. It's
I know,
already
it just like...
flew by. So
Let's see if we can answer a couple of questions before we get into it. And one question I really like, can concussions disrupt the endocrine system, specifically hormonal imbalances that may cause panic attacks, anxiety, etc.? I'm taking the supplements you recommend, adhere to a diet you suggest, and mindful of the ants. I have panic attacks at the end of every month, for 3 days consecutively. So what a lot of people don't know, and I write about this in The End of Mental Illness, which I'm hoping you pre-ordered, that concussions can damage the pituitary gland, which is the master hormone gland in your brain, and you just disrupt all of your hormones, from estrogen, progesterone, thyroid, testosterone, DHEA, pregnenolone, and measuring them and optimizing them can be really helpful. And I don't know if you thought about this when I was reading it, that I wonder if her progesterone levels.
Yeah, because like cyclical dropping can also make it worse. So that's I was thinking about that too. Because that
And you
really
take
helps.
progesterone. Why?
Because I would end up on the 6 o'clock news.
Yes, you would.
I don't need someone getting a video of me chasing small bunnies or something. I like this one. Please address neurotropics.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, no, I want you to do it.
So nootropics are just they're smart supplements.
Right.
And
make
that's
you
actually what BrainMD creates.
They make you smarter.
Smart supplements. So, for example,
But they're
we
brain
have-
targeted.
We have Brain and Memory Power Boost, which works through 6 different mechanisms in the brain. It increases blood flow because it has ginkgo in it. It increases cell membrane communication with phosphatidylserine. It helps blood sugar stabilization with alpha lipoic acid, mitochondrial energy with acetyl L-carnitine, acetylcholine with huperzine A. I mean, it's just a very special supplement. Now, there are things like piracetam that have some studies showing that they're helpful, but they're very small studies and not very many of them. A nootropic, another example, medicine example would be Provigil or Nuvigil or Adderall or Ritalin.
Things that increase focus and performance.
And if you have ADD, I'm very much a fan of them. But if you don't have ADD, it can actually ultimately make things worse over time. Let's take 2 more. I'm wondering about leaky gut as a diagnosis. You want to tackle that?
Well, you can get leaky gut as a diagnosis if you go through a series of testing, but usually that's not what people come in for. Usually they come in because they have all sorts of other symptoms. So brain fog, depression, they have GI issues, they've got diarrhea or bloating or gas or all sorts of other problems, and that's the reason they come in. What ends up happening is if you go to a functional medicine doctor, they could test you for all kinds of things, including how your gut function. But one of my favorite things is that when you are suffering from those types of things, we just put you on an elimination diet, and most people start to feel better almost instantly. Because if your gut's not working right, you're not going to feel right. And most people's guts, if their diet is poor, aren't going to feel good. And when we clean up their diet, they start to feel better. And it's just the easiest way that we handle it is to just clean up their diet. And it's not because, here's the big
Clean up their
misconception.
diet, and probiotics, like ProBrain Biotics, can also
But here's
help.
the big misconception. People are like, oh, this big extreme elimination diet that is, going to be this big thing that I do just for a couple weeks. No, we actually, the way we do it is it's really just cleaning up your diet in a way that we actually want you to eat that way. Pretty
We
much
want you to
most of the
detox
time.
all the time.
Right.
I mean, why do you want toxins in
Right.
your body? Oh my goodness. So Sandy asked, can you still pre-order the book? Yes. Can you still get a 50% coupon off anything at BrainMD one time? If you pre-order the book, yes, endofmentalillness.com. You also get Tana's cookbook, the 10-day Brain Boost. You can watch 6 of our national public television specials for free. So many benefits by pre-ordering the book. Please do it before the book comes out next
Yeah,
Tuesday.
it's not valid after that, correct? So it's valid
Yes.
now.
Now, you have, after tonight's class, we are going to announce the winners of, and let me just go through some of the gifts. They just said they emailed them to me. That if you tell us your story and we pick it, the grand prize is $5,000, so like physical money. Another grand prize is a full evaluation at Amen Clinics, a full evaluation. It's 2 SPECT scans, our history, meeting with the doctor, first follow-up visit, 2 winners, a year's supply of Brain and Body Power, which is valued at $1,200 each, 10 winners of Brain and Body Power, a month's supply, 10 winners of an all-access pass to Amen University, all of our classes there, 15 winners, year-long subscriptions to Brain Fit Life, 25 winners of a signed copy, I'm going to sign them, of my new book, The End of Mental Illness, 10 Bright Mind Therapy lamps, which are just amazing,
Wow.
and 10 Brain Health Revolution master packages, which are $240 on public
I
television.
don't remember us ever doing
So
contests quite like this.
no, we want your stories. And ultimately what we want is you to live the message. Because if you live the message, you become a great messenger and you change not only yourself, but the other people in your life. So join the contest. Okay. Live from Canada. Thank you. So this week I want to talk about how do you make a massive difference. Let's see if I can get this. Got to turn this on. So it was 10 years ago. And I just finished writing Change Your Brain, Change Your Body, my second book on the connection between physical health and mental health. And it was a Sunday morning, and I was so happy. Because, you know, when you write a book, you just finished a book. I'm so proud of you. The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, coming out January 6, 2021. Wow. I'm so proud of you. And so, and you, when you turned in the manuscript, you were really happy. It was
Yeah.
like, wow, that's a lot of work. And it was a Sunday morning, and we were going to go to church. And as we went to Mariners Church here in Newport Beach, I said, why don't you drop Chloe off at Children's Church? I'll save us seats. And as I walked toward the sanctuary, this is an actual picture. I took a picture of the hundreds of donuts they had for sale. And I've been going to church since I was 4 years old. I'd always seen the donuts. But that Sunday, it just really made me mad because I'm going to church to get my soul fed. These people are trying to kill me. There is not one healthy thing about donuts. And then right around the corner is bacon and sausage cooking on the grill. And I'm horrified because I know these have nitrites in them. It's bad fat. And I just shook my head. And before I walked in the sanctuary, I saw them cooking hundreds of hot dogs for after church. And I felt like I'm in a fight. That's why we call it the Brain Warrior's Way. And I just got punched and punched and punched. And as I sat down, the minister started talking about the ice cream festival they had the night before. And now I'm furious. I just am so unhappy that when Tana found me in church, I'm typing on my phone.
You were playing with the mistress.
I'm typing on my phone.
The mistress.
And you gave me that look
Get the mistress out of church.
that only wives, nobody else in my life, nobody is allowed to give me this look. Give me the look. That was the look. And so I showed her what I was writing. Go to church and get
donuts, bacon, sausage, hot dogs, ice cream. They have no idea they are sending people to heaven early. Save them, then kill them. This is not the plan.
You got to let me say something at some point here. So it's true, because we have been studying about this for a while. Now, granted, several years before this, even we weren't savvy to all the information about what food does to our bodies. So, just to be fair, I get why churches do this. They do this as a way to bring people together, because food brings people together. They just aren't really aware, and they're finally starting to become aware. The problem is they're not really getting on board as they're becoming aware. But I'm not sure that the intention was to kill people. Let's be clear.
But that's what's happening. Save them, then kill them. Do you know if you go to church in your 20s,
you actually die earlier.
that you don't die early, but you're more likely to be obese and diabetic in your middle ages.
Which makes you die earlier. Hello.
So that Sunday, I prayed, I do that, God would use me to change the culture of food at church. And while I'm praying this prayer, I'm thinking to myself, this is the dumbest prayer you ever prayed. How's that going to happen? But as you already know about me, I have an attitude problem. Growing up, my dad called me a maverick, and to him that was not a good thing. And so I just told God he had to deal with it. That's my prayer, listen, don't listen, this is my prayer. No lie. 2 weeks later, Pastor Rick Warren from Saddleback Church called me. And I had never met Pastor Warren. Of course, I knew who he was. He's the senior pastor at one of the largest churches in the world. They have 18 campuses. Over 60,000 people come to church every Sunday. Their main campus is in South Orange County, but they also have one in the Philippines. They have one in Berlin. They have one in Hong Kong, one in Buenos Aires, and all over Southern California. And Pastor Warren said, that Sunday that I was saying the prayer, he had baptized 800 people. And he said about halfway through, his back started to hurt. He's like, everybody's fat. And then he said, well, I'm fat, and I'm a terrible example to the church. And he said, will you help me? And I'm like, you had me from a low. I was like, oh my goodness, how exciting. I'm thrilled. And together with Tana and our friend Mark Hyman, we created the Daniel Plan, which was a community-based healthcare initiative. The first week, January 15th, 2011, 15,000 people signed up. The first year, the results were just spectacular. Participants lost over 250,000 pounds, better energy, focus, creativity, sleep and mood, reductions in stress, blood pressure, blood sugar, sexual dysfunction, which is always fun to talk about in church, and many medications. And wasn't this just one of the highlights of our life, helping them?
Oh, it was amazing. It was a huge undertaking, and it's still going. We're still sort of feeling the aftermath and the aftershocks of it. It's pretty amazing.
Well, Pastor Warren and I and Mark Hyman went on to write New York Times #1 best-selling book, The Daniel Plan. 2015, it was named Christian Book of the Year. The Daniel Plan is done in thousands of communities, churches, synagogues, temples, and mosques around the world. And it's based on 5 pillars. Faith. Why the heck do you care? We talked about purpose. Food. Food is medicine or it's poison. Fitness. You have to move. Focus, which was all about brain health. And friends. You get better together or you get sick together. And it just shows that intention, the prayer, can lead to a revolution in health. You just have to stick with it.
Yeah, no, I really think the small group aspect of it was that was the secret to the success.
So then about 18 months ago, I was invited to the White House. That was cool. And they asked me, what's your big idea on the mental illness crisis in America, the opiate epidemic, and prison reform? So those were the three things we were discussing. And my big idea, and it remains this way, is to create a nationwide brain health campaign taught in schools, prisons, churches, in the workplace. This is just so important. It's why we're doing this live class. We need brain warriors to help us create this brain health revolution. People who get healthy as a
Yeah,
group
see, that's it.
doubles their chance
See?
of success.
I was right.
Yes, dear. Focusing on brain health decreases your risk of anxiety, depression, Alzheimer's disease, and addictions. Are these mental illnesses? I would argue absolutely not. They are brain health issues that steal your mind. Get your brain right, and your mind follows. You also become a better son, a better friend, a better mother, and a better grandfather. One of my favorite stories ever is of Dave and Bonnie, who failed marital therapy. How do you fail marital therapy?
When you don't get the outcome that you're trying to achieve.
Well, after 3 years
you get
and
fired.
$20,000, the therapist told them to get divorced.
Right.
Now, how many of you have been to marital therapy? My first marriage, I went to marital therapy. Do you ever go to marital therapy?
Let's not have this discussion. Let's just not.
Well, we never went to marital
No, we've never
therapy.
been marital therapy.
Which is not a bad thing.
No, yeah. I'm definitely not saying it's a bad thing. I just don't want to have the discussion about the first time around. Let's just say we failed.
So they failed. And the therapist told them to get divorced. So they went for 3 years, spent $20,000. And at the end, the therapist said, this is not going to work.
Right.
And they got upset because they wanted to be married. And the therapist got nervous. And she said, well, I know a clinic in Southern California. We have 8 clinics around the country. Bellevue, Washington, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, Atlanta, Washington, D.C., and New York. And she said, I know a doctor who takes care of really difficult people. You should go see him. Which is, so she flunked them and then shamed them. And they came to see us. And as part of our process, we look at your brain. I mean, how the heck do I know what's going on with you unless I look? And Dave, was diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder, had a
I just
bad
think that's
temper.
funny.
He was diagnosed with personality disorder, ADHD, and bipolar disorder. And this is common for us. This is like the common person who comes.
Yeah, let me clarify. I don't think
This
it's funny that he was diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder. I think it's funny that they call it that. IED. Like, what were they thinking?
They call it based on what they see rather than based on.
But an IED, really?
Yes, no, it's funny. Okay, so we scan them because we don't know what's going on. She has a healthy brain. So hopefully by now you're beginning to look at SPECT scans and they measure blood flow and activity. Hers is healthy. He looks like he's a drug addict.
That's what I would think.
Except in his history, because if you come see us, we take very detailed histories. He said he never used drugs
And I would think he was lying.
and he didn't drink. But what's the
Lie,
first thing
lie.
they teach us in psychiatry school
Lie.
about addicts?
I just know that from my family.
That's actually in The Relentless Courage of a
Yes,
Scared
it is.
Child. And so the first thing I did when I saw them is I asked him in front of his wife, is that true? You don't drink and you've never used drugs. And he said, Dr. Amen, I have many problems. That's not it. And then I turned to his wife and I said, is that true? And she said, oh, yes, Dr. Amen, he doesn't drink. He's never done drugs as far as I know. He's just a jerk. And like,
That'd be the diagnosis I'd give him.
and like you, I chuckled. But in my head, I went, why does his brain look like this? And what I've learned from doing 160,000 scans is that when there's a brain like this and they deny drug or alcohol use and their wife says no way, there's something else damaging his brain. And so I went through the list. Did he have a near drowning episode? Because that can damage your brain. Any form of anoxia or lack of oxygen can damage your brain. Did he have an infection like Lyme disease or herpes encephalitis or Epstein-Barr or toxoplasmosis, which you get from cats? Did he have an environmental toxin like mold exposure or volatile organic solvents like some of the painters or some of the worst brains I've seen? Does he have severe low thyroid? I mean, you know how you feel when your thyroid's low. Or anemia, low red blood cell counts. Is very important. None of those are mental illnesses. He has a brain problem. So you can diagnose him bipolar all you want, but those meds aren't going to work for him. You can diagnose him with ADD, and those meds aren't going to work for him unless you figure out why you have symptoms of bipolar disorder, why you have symptoms of ADHD. And that's sort of the whole point behind the end of mental illness. They're not mental illnesses. And so I asked him where he worked. And he said, I work in a furniture factory. And I said, what do you do? And he said, I finish furniture all day long. He was doing drugs. In fact, he was doing the worst drug of abuse, which is inhaling organic solvents. Did you know that? That's the worst drug.
Well, and think about kids huffing and stuff like that. It's terrible.
I'm also a child psychiatrist. I had a 4-year-old once who used to open the gas tank on the lawnmower and put his mouth over it and inhale. And he came in my office and I had those dry erasers.
Yeah, they love the smell of those.
And he takes the kappa. It's not going to be good. And I said, well, do you wear a mask? And he said, well, they tell me I should, but I don't. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not the sign of intelligent life. But I don't say anything because I have good frontal lobe function because I'm like, that's not going to help. It's very important to inhibit every stupid thing you think. You're inhibiting now, aren't you?
I was just thinking sometimes men don't do that, and we're very quick to help you.
Well, did you know I did this study between the male and female brain, and guys tend to have sleepy brains, women tend to have
Busy.
very busy brains, but makes them a great leader because the executive part of their brain really works.
That's why we
much
multitask
harder.
so much.
So I looked to Bonnie and I said, when did he become a jerk? And she said, what do you mean? I said, did you marry him that way? Do you have daddy issues you're trying to work out? And she said, no. When we first got married, he was great. It wasn't until about 5 years ago. And then she put her hand over her mouth and she said, oh my God, it wasn't until about the time he got this job in the furniture factory that his behavior started to change. Do you think he's being poisoned at work? I said, I think he is. And in that moment, he went from being a jerk. He went from being someone she should divorce, that everyone was telling her she should divorce, to someone who was sick and needed help.
Well, and it happened while he was trying to support his family.
So in his attempt to be a good husband, to go to work, to support his family,
And you wonder how often
he's being poisoned.
And you wonder how often that happens with construction workers and they get head injuries or,
Or firefighters.
right. Firefighters. I mean, my gosh, they're our heroes, but they get brain damage.
Or police officers who are under chronic
Or
stress.
soldiers.
Or soldiers.
I mean, how
And
many
it's
sad cases have we seen?
easy to call them bad. It's much harder to ask why. Easy to call people bad, harder.
Yeah, I hated
Yes,
that
why?
when you told me that.
Do you want to share?
Not really.
Come on. You should share.
I'm really good at calling people bad. It's a skill set I've honed over many years. And then you start dragging all of my family members back into my life. We need to know why they're acting like that. No, actually, I don't. I just need them to stay away. You're like, no, I need to scan all of them. Yeah.
So, that moment changed everything. Think about it with me. Say she would have divorced him. Say she would have taken the professional help, taken the advice of the helper, and he has no brain resources. I mean, look at that. He has literally
No reserve.
no resources in his brain. And so he marries the woman of his dreams. He acts terrible. He feels awful about himself.
And
He
usually-
can't control it.
Yeah.
And everybody's just calling him bad because he was diagnosed with mixed personality disorder with narcissistic and antisocial features. Do you know what that means?
You're a jerk.
You're a jerk. It's
I can
just
think of other words,
our
but yeah.
technical. It's just how we bill, insurance companies for you're a jerk.
Code for you're a jerk.
Right. So if she would have divorced him, and he has no brain resources, that
he could have become
easily
dangerous.
could have hurt himself.
Right. I mean, how often do you see
or
that?
Hurt his family and then hurt himself.
Right.
And how often, just as you said, do you see that?
Well, and we saw that in the hospital all the time.
Really?
All the time. I worked in a trauma unit. Gunshot wounds, assault, all the time.
So, what did we do? I took him out of work. And ultimately, they transferred him because they knew they were liable. They transferred him to another position in the company, and we put him on a brain rehabilitation program. Now, you've been with us 6 weeks, so you're going to have a sense of what we did. We attacked each of the Bright Minds risk factors, from hyperbaric oxygen to multiple vitamin to high dose fish oil to brain and memory power boost that works in 6 different ways. We had him avoid anything that hurts his brain, including inhaling organic solvents, engage in regular brain healthy habits, including losing weight and getting his blood sugar under control, balancing his hormones, working on sleep, helping him not believe every stupid thing he thinks. And you could just see his wife relax.
Yeah, because there's hope.
And he become engaged
There's hope now.
because there's hope. And
Whoa.
a year later,
huge
his
difference.
brain is better as he is better, as their marriage is better. With a better brain, you're a better husband, you're a better wife, you're a better son, you're a better grandfather. You make more money. You are more successful because your brain controls everything you do and everything you are. This is basically, did Dave have a mental illness?
Was Dave a jerk?
Dave did not have a mental illness.
And he wasn't a
He
jerk.
had a brain health issue that was damaging his ability to be his best. So, actually, one of the first cases I had after I started imaging, he called himself the anger broker of the Sacramento Valley. And I saw him after he got out of a psychiatric hospital for a suicide attempt.
Ooh.
And he was mean. And he had the suicide attempt because his wife left him. And I completely got why she left him, because he was mean to my staff. He was mean to me. And, and I don't fire patients. I just don't. I know a lot of doctors do if you're sort of a jerk to them. But after the 3rd time, I went, I need you to go get scanned. And there, the cameras were not in the clinics at the time. And so I sent him to the next city to get a SPECT scan. And I said, you need to go do this, because if you don't do it, I won't see you. Because I don't tolerate people being mean to my staff. And not to me. And so he did, because he wanted me to see him. And he had a brain that was on fire. So he was worried, rigid, and flexible. Things don't go his way. He gets upset. And he had a head injury. You could see it on the left side. I'm like, did you ever have a head injury? And of course he said no. And I went, well, are you sure? Did you ever fall out of a tree or off a fence or dive into a shallow pool? And he was riding a bike down the Colorado Rockies, and his front tire hit a rock. He flipped over onto his head. He was knocked unconscious. But he said no initially. And I'm like, really? Oh, well, you had that same thing. You and them. And when I put him on medicine to balance his left temporal lobe and to calm down his frontal lobes, no lie, he's like the sweetest person. Within 4 months, my office staff loves him, and they're just thrilled every time they see him. And was he a jerk? I mean, he acted like a jerk, but why? If you don't ask why, how would you ever know? So easy to call people bad, harder to say why. This is so enlightening and sad at the same time. How many times do people get misdiagnosed simply because insurance companies are not on board with the SPECT scan?
Yep.
All the time.
All the time.
All the time. You can try and kill
And
yourself.
it's easy to it's like one thing to think about that, but when you think about that ripple effect of how many families are affected, how many marriages, how many kids, how many jobs, finances, like the ripple effect is crazy. It's crazy.
You have any experience?
I almost canceled my first date with you because you were a psychiatrist.
Why?
Because I didn't have good experiences.
With psychiatrists? Or?
No, with my grandmother being severely mistreated by a psychiatrist, my dad being diagnosed with Alzheimer's when he didn't have Alzheimer's, with me, myself, just terrible experiences. When I was depressed, being put on the wrong medication. It's awful. It's awful.
So I'm going to tell you a secret of how I got her to fall in love with me. Because when we first met, I liked her way more than she liked me.
It's not true. I just wasn't ready to commit.
It's true. Anyways, here's the secret. Let me tell them the secret. And shortly after we met, your dad got diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And misdiagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And
That's a big misdiagnosis.
well, it's so common.
But it's terrible.
It's so common. We just saw someone today who went to like the Mayo Clinic and was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And when we scanned him, he didn't have Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah, that's like traumatic for the family to hear.
But if you don't look, how do you know? If you don't look, how do you know? So anyways, back to the story on how I got you to fall in love with me. I have, because I've been a psychiatrist a long time, I'm like, if you want someone to fall in love with you,
You're teaching them manipulation.
do something.
He's teaching them mind manipulation right now. This is not what this class is about. It's not about mind manipulation.
It's not manipulation. It's how to get your way.
Is there a
We're
difference?
all manipulative. It's just the more sophisticated you are, the harder it is to tell. This is a bonus for those of you that are watching. Can I finish this story?
Yes. Please tell them how you manipulated me into falling in love with you.
Okay. Encouraged. Do something nice for someone she loves.
It's true. So at least if you're going to manipulate people, do something
It's
good
not
with
manipulative.
it. Do something
It's
good with it.
How to get a connection. And so when your dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, I'm like, well, we should scan him.
Yeah.
And when I scanned him, the pattern for Alzheimer's disease has been described in the psychiatric literature for 30 years, more than 30 years maybe. And he didn't have it. In fact, his emotional brain was working too hard. And I'm like, oh, he has something called pseudo dementia, which is depression that is masquerading as Alzheimer's disease. And he was actually on a toxic cocktail of medication. And when I changed his medication, put him on supplements, changed his lifestyle,
He lost 20 pounds.
he got healthier. And 6 months later, he's teaching like an all-day course at Mariners Church.
Yeah, 7-hour seminar at the church, which he couldn't even, he was a recluse and not showering before that. But the story's a little more complicated than that because wasn't speaking to my dad. I hadn't really had a relationship with my dad ever in my entire life, but definitely not since I was 18 when I told him, bye-bye, don't talk to me again. And so now you're telling me we need to bring him to live with me.
No,
So
just
you can
to
scan
him.
No, you wanted him to come stay with me. And then you're like, well, he can't get well unless he's living with you. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Do you want me to what? I'm like, this is a guy I don't know, don't trust. But the interesting thing is that there was no one else to take care of him. So I resisted, kicked, fought, screamed in my head, finally gave in because what are you going to do? Ultimately, what are you going to do? And as he got well, I was able to heal that relationship. And that's, I mean, to me, that was more the ultimate point of all of it, was that a relationship that had been so awful, so toxic my whole life. And now finally at the end of his life, he ends up dying in my arms. When he died, he didn't die of anything brain related. It was leukemia. We had completely healed our relationship, which would never have happened if he hadn't fixed his brain. And so that was a pretty interesting turn.
Sort of a cool way to get a pretty girl to fall in love with you. I'm just saying, doesn't sound that manipulative to me.
Do we have questions?
When your brain is right, you become better at everything you do. So this is my grandfather, who I loved. I was named after him. He was my best friend growing up, and he had a heart attack that took him away way too early. And so why do you want to be healthy? You know, when I think of this picture, I think of my grandbabies. We took 2 of them to the Laker game on Sunday. That was really fun.
It was really fun.
But I want to be around for as long as I can. What's your motivation to be healthy? So our mission is to end mental illness by creating a revolution in brain health. That's our goal. And you have to start today. I mean, when I say you're going to start Monday, it never works. So you're going to start January 1st, because now we're a long ways from January 1st. Start today. And, you know, we say this is just the beginning. Success starts with a healthy mind. Failure is often the result of a brain gone wrong. The good news, it's never too late to change your brain to heal your mind. And so we're very excited for you. What are the tasks for this week? Detox negative people. We have a friends versus accomplices inventory. So write down who your friends who support your mental health versus those who support your mental illnesses, or your brain health versus your brain health trouble. Where can you share this information? I mean, ultimately, we're doing this to create warriors to spread the message. We have evil ruler strategies in the book, The End of Mental Illness. I talk about if I was an evil ruler, and I've given you some of those strategies. If I was an evil ruler, how would I create mental illness in America? And so many of them are happening now. Well, we wrote evil ruler strategies from the book. We also have good ruler strategies. I want you to download those, read those. Send a Brain Warriors Way podcast to other people. We just did a podcast with Josh Axe. That was really great. We did one you're just going to love on the book It Didn't Start With You with
so
Mark Wolin. That was really great.
It was really great.
We've done, how many podcasts have we done?
Oh my gosh, I'm not even sure.
Like 600 or something crazy. Share my viral video about Andrew. It's one of the most important stories I've ever shared. And 7 is create a short video or an audio or an email to us on how this information has impacted you. And we're going to pick, goodness, almost 50 people. So you have a really good chance of winning if you follow the directions. And then on March 17th, so that's 3 weeks from tonight, I'm going to come back. We're going to come back, and we're going to announce the winners and perhaps answer a few more questions about how you put this information in your life. So we are thrilled you are watching. Let's take time to answer a few more questions. If someone has allergic reactions to fish oil, where would you suggest super low doses to begin with? Well, really high quality fish oil, like we have at BrainMD, all the fish proteins are filtered out.
Yeah, typically
and
people
we've
don't.
not had anybody, at least that I'm aware of, that had an allergic
I mean, it doesn't
reaction.
mean you, like on a rare occasion they can't, but usually people who are allergic to fish protein don't have a problem with fish, high quality filtered fish oil.
But I would start with a very low dose. Don't start with 4 capsules at once. You can actually take a toothpick and poke the capsule and squeeze it, maybe
do a little.
into a shake, and then just have like a quarter of it. I think that's how I would start. Is eating healthy fats okay, even if you're
We addressed
trying
that one already,
to lose
and the
weight?
answer, we addressed that one last week, and the answer is absolutely, especially if you're trying to lose weight, because it increases satiety. So for sure.
Satiety, you sense of fullness.
Yeah.
You talked about the benefits of hyperbaric oxygen. How many sessions will it take to make a difference? Will I really be able to feel a change in my life? I was looking for mental acuity, but after 4 sessions, didn't see any results.
Can I answer this? I mean, you need to answer it from the scientific standpoint, but so it's funny. So I am doing hyperbaric oxygen, and when I first started doing it, I was like, all right, I'm so busy. Why am I taking the time to do this? I know I'm doing it because I know it's supposed to be good for me. I'm hoping it's going to help my brain. I didn't really feel it until after the 10th one. And that's when I really started to notice it. And I can't say that I woke up one day and went, whoa, I feel really good. But what happened was I all of a sudden noticed I was stronger when I was working out. And like I wasn't as tired during the day. Like I noticed little things like that. And so then after about maybe 5 or 10 more, I started to notice like just, it was sort of subtle, and it just sort of subtly started to, I noticed improvements. And what I love going in there. It's like I can escape the whole world, and I can just tell people I didn't hear you because I was in the chamber.
So
it's
sometimes people notice it after a couple. Sometimes they need 40 sessions.
Yeah.
There's a great
don't we
story.
typically tell people 40?
We do, but there's a great story of Super Bowl MVP quarterback Joe Namath, who had a SPECT scan, and his brain looked terrible. And he had 40 sessions of hyperbaric oxygen. And his scan looked better, and he felt better. So then he did 40 more. And after 40 more, his scan looked better still, and he felt better. And so I decided to do 40 more. He did a total of 120. His scan was normal. And at his age, he's still doing product endorsements, and he just says it made a radical positive
Yeah, I've heard
difference.
people say all different things. I've heard some people say, oh, after about the 5th one, I started to sleep better. I heard other people say, nah, it took me like 15 or 20. Like I started to feel better, but I didn't really notice a big improvement until after I had like 15 or 20. I think it's just different. I just started to notice a subtle improvement, and then it was just very subtle little steps after that. But it's definitely better, for sure.
Is hyperbaric oxygen contraindicated for any conditions? And then another person is claustrophobic to it. It's contraindicated if you can't handle the pressure in your ears. If you have glaucoma, you should be careful because it can change the pressure in your eye. Sometimes a person's eyeglass prescription will change with hyperbaric
My
oxygen.
mom, when she hit her head, they didn't pick up that she had a bleed. So if you have had a recent head injury, you want to be sure you don't have a bleed. Like you've waited and you know you don't have a bleed in your head, right? You don't want pressure in your head if you've got a bleed. So for sure.
Do CT and MRI scans necessarily show brain damage after a serious fall or injury? The answer is absolutely not. They are often normal.
So my favorite example that you give to describe to people the difference between what we do and a CT or an MRI, you could take your computer right now and drop it, and the computer will look normal, right? That is an anatomical scan. It looks normal. It looks fine. But if you try and turn it on, it may not run normally. It may not function normally. That's more akin to what we do. Like we check the function of it. Just because it looks normal doesn't mean it's running normal.
What are your thoughts on venison?
If it's wild, if it's wild, free range, like, great. Fantastic.
What are your thoughts on whole milk?
So that's different for everybody. So the reason we're generally not a fan of dairy is because we actually talked about that in one of our previous episodes. The caseomorphins, when it breaks down with stomach acid and it crosses the blood-brain barrier. However, the other reason is because the majority of the population is lactose intolerant. And even if they're not lactose intolerant, they have a problem with breaking down some form of the dairy proteins, the milk proteins. So that's the main reason we have people go off of it for a couple weeks. But not everyone has that. And that said, there's other issues with dairy as well. And I actually write a lot about that in our books. That said, the studies that show that people have severe allergic reactions to cow's milk, when they actually did studies with children with severe milk allergies and they tested them with sheep's milk, or goat's milk, they didn't have the same reaction. The majority of them did not have the same reaction. So many people who can't tolerate, it's actually digested, the casein in it is different, the protein is different, and many people who can't tolerate cow's milk have a different reaction with sheep's milk or goat's milk. So everyone's not the same. It's a smaller percentage of the population, and some people can tolerate certain types of milk better than others. We write extensively about that in Brain Warriors Way and Omni Diet.
When my babies quit breastfeeding, the pediatrician recommends whole milk several times a day.
Of course.
What do you think?
That's because it's always been said.
It's the habit.
But
if your child develops a lot of earaches, they may be sensitive to dairy. And
or
so
phlegm,
many
or sinus
people,
problems.
I think you were one of them, had a lot of antibiotics.
Yeah.
And often when you just get rid of the dairy, their ear infections get significantly better. Is decaf coffee okay?
I would make it organic, but yes.
It has a lot of antioxidants. So you say to avoid bread. I understand this in regards to white bread, bagels, etc. But what about whole grain organic bread? In particular, my favorite, Dave's Killer Bread, 21 whole grains and seeds. Thank you for all your amazing information.
So we don't have a lot of time. And that's going to take a little time. Again, we write about this extensively. I've written about it extensively in Omni Diet, Brain Warriors Way. So if you want more information,
I write about it in the End of Mental Illness.
Yes, if you want more information,
there's a whole chapter called Food Made Insanely Simple.
So if you want more information, you can actually read more about that. But the quick version is it still has gluten. And believe it or not, on the glycemic index, it's not much better than sugar or white bread. So if you're gonna have bread and you're going to do it, then Dave's Killer Bread is probably better because it's organic. I will give it that. But it's not technically all that much better for you as far as the glycemic index or regarding gluten. And we've already discussed in one of our previous episodes why we're not fans of gluten. So, and we go extensively into it in some of our other books. So,
my DCFS social worker is giving me a hard time about keeping my kids away from cow's milk.
Yeah.
Doctor has noted that they have mild milk intolerance, and he said that doesn't mean anything. There are people that don't have this information, and so because they were raised on cow's milk, they're like, oh, it's all fine. And
so it's also the difference between traditional medicine that's been taught one way forever and functional medicine, which is more progressive. I would never suggest you go against what your doctor teaches, but I would suggest you do some research on your own. I tell people to be their own best advocate when it comes to health. Do a little research on it.
Does a postmenopausal woman need to have her iron levels monitored? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because you don't know unless you look.
Even
and
men
low
need to have
iron
them.
is a problem, but high iron.
Yeah, even men need
is
to
a
have it
problem.
checked.
All right, last question. We're so grateful for all of you.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts on drinking alcohol, and how much
How much?
does
How
it
often?
hurt the brain? So if you have 1 or 2 normal-sized drinks a week, it's probably not a big deal. People who drink every day have a smaller brain.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to your brain, size matters. I think we talked about alcohol,
Yeah.
but less is better if you want to keep your brain healthy
Mm-hmm.
over time. A little bit's not a problem. A lot is a disaster. Thank you so much for being part of our live class. We will be back March 17th to announce the winners. We hope you're one of them. Thanks so much.
Thank you.